Hi, welcome to Midnight Sleep Whispers, where you can immerse yourself in a world of mysterious and spine-chilling horror stories. Perfect for drifting off to sleep or simply unwinding. Get cozy, dim the lights, and let's begin.
Australia, October 1978. An ordinary autumn evening approaches, and the sun slowly sinks below the horizon, painting the clouds in ashy orange hues. The air above Melbourne's southern coast is filled with an unusual silence weather, like this is when pilots especially love to take to the skies. From Moorabbin Airfield, a suburban airport, a light single-engine Cessna 182L soars into the air. At the controls sits 20-year-old Frederick Valentich, a young pilot whose face still bears traces of teenage innocence, but whose eyes already glimmer with a fanatical passion for the sky. He doesn't just fly, he lives for this silence, this engine vibration, this feeling that the world below loses weight while the sky becomes his home. He is headed to King Island. The flight is simple, routine. No passengers, no obligations, just the dark strip of the strait ahead and the steady pulse of the instruments. The farther he moves from the coastline, the denser the air becomes. A sensation creeps in, as if the sky isn't welcoming him or waiting for him. At first, everything seems normal. The radio works, the instruments show no signs of malfunction, but a strange crackling emerges in his headphones, as if someone were brushing wet film with their fingers. It's not loud, not sharp, but out of place. As if someone were trying to enter the cockpit not with sound, but with presence. Then, a few miles ahead, a light appears in the sky. Not the fire of an aircraft, not a star. It doesn't pulse, doesn't change, doesn't blink. It simply exists too even, too cold. One, then three more. A perfect cross of green lights. They don't move, don't recede, don't approach. They hover, as if suspended in the sky by an invisible hand, defying all laws of motion and gravity. Something tightens inside Frederick. His muscles harden like metal in frost. The yoke under his hand seems to lose response. He no longer feels air resistance. It's as if he's flying in a sky that no longer resists its watching. He sends a message, at first calmly, then breaking into short breaths where fear gives way to horror, losing all composure. The object is shiny, too fast. It moves instantly, disappears, reappears on the other side, as if taunting, as if testing. Frederick's voice begins to falter, as if the ether, rather than a communication tool, is an enemy. His sentences crumble, distort, emerge in fragments where only the essence remains. He doesn't know what it is. He's certain it's not an airplane. And then everything changes. A harsh, shattering sound bursts into the ether as if a live cable is being ripped apart or something massive and alive is being bent. A metallic screech fills the frequencies, distorts, repels the signals. The final 17 seconds are neither voice nor noise, but something else. A complex, cold, predatory sound, unlike anything tied to machinery or living creatures. And then darkness. No coordinates, no distress signal, not the slightest sound. On the ground, the controller doesn't immediately realize it's over. He keeps staring at the panel as if it might come back to life. But the instruments are silent. The plane is gone. It didn't crash. It didn't fall. It vanished, as if cut out of the air, as if it never existed. And above the strait, where the Cessna flew just a moment ago, lies a smooth, oily darkness, calm, silent, and now utterly alien. The following morning brought no answers. It brought something worse than silence, so dense it felt as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The sun rose over Melbourne's southern coast, but didn't dispel the darkness. It only illuminated, it made it visible, like dust caught in a beam of light on an attic floor. Helicopters hovered over Bass Strait, their blades slowly cutting through the humid air. Boats moved across the water surface in slow, deliberate loops, and no one spoke over the radio unless it was absolutely necessary. Even the ocean, usually alive and unruly, now lay still, as if it too was waiting for something, or, even more frightening, waiting for nothing to return. On the rocky shore, emergency service vehicles lined up with satellite antennas pointed skyward, as if blindly searching for a voice that no longer responded. Technicians wandered between the vans, glued to screens that had shown only static for a long time. No fuel slicks, no debris, not a scrap of wreckage, only absence. The same as the night before, but now heavier. Almost alive. The air felt wrong, as if gravity itself had shifted here, and above it all loomed the sky vast, pale indifferent. Neither calm nor empty, simply watching. Michael Lang, a man with eyes the color of faded metal, and the gait of someone who has spent years investigating where logic gives way to darkness, arrived among the first. Behind him lay a military past, dozens of classified cases, most of which had been buried and forgotten. He didn't believe in mysticism. He believed in data, in wreckage, in trajectories, in the weak links of machines and human decisions, but now, before him was silence, too pure, too complete. The search continued from the air and water. Net trawls scoured the seabed. Helicopters traced circles, casting shadows on the smooth surface. No signs of a crash, no floating fuel, no plastic. No fragments of the fuselage, even the emergency locator beacon silent. As if the plane hadn't just disappeared, as if it had never existed at all. Michael had never seen anything like it in his entire career. Late that evening, a transcript of the last radio contact fell into Lang's hands. The signal was garbled, not by interference, but by an internal resistance, as if the ether itself resisted transmission. The damaged audio recording preserved only fragments of breathing, metallic screeches, and nearly indistinguishable rustles, as if someone had recorded silence from the other side of a wall. On the frequency where only Frederick should have been, something else emerged. Lang listened with cold focus, but even his face twitched when a voice broke through the static. It was unnaturally quiet, as if whispered by someone unfamiliar with a microphone. Not one voice, but several things, like strands of ice, threading through the air, childlike, but not alive. Not like the voices heard in a yard or a nursery. These whispers were devoid of breath, as if uttered not by lungs, but by emptiness. The operator on the tower was stunned into silence. He was the first to hear the recording and hadn't spoken a word since, sitting clutching his headphones until he was led away. He was a man who trusted instruments and protocol, but after that night, his gaze changed as if someone had peered into his soul from the darkness. Lang remained silent, replaying the recording over and over. He knew this case wouldn't reach the press. It wouldn't be dissected on news broadcasts or briefings, because even the military and government have thresholds they refuse to cross, and this disappearance was one such case. It didn't demand explanations, it demanded silence. And yet, something in the voices on the recording gnawed at Lang. In one of the whispers, it wasn't a name, but a question, as if those whispering weren't calling for Frederick but waiting for someone else. And Lang began to realize, perhaps the plane didn't vanish because it lost its course. Perhaps it was expected. Michael Longa, former Air Force officer, now a crash investigator whose career has outlasted many wars. He doesn't believe in coincidences, doesn't believe in miracles, only in what can be measured. The angle of a bank, the length of a skid mark, metal torn apart by the wind's speed. He's accustomed to the idea that behind every crash stands a person frightened, exhausted, or mistaken. He knew answers rarely come from where you expect them, so He started with the simplest place, the family. Frederick's father's house was modest and spotless, but it lacked any sense of peace or hope for a return. Only a stark silence, like that of a home where windows haven't been opened in years. The pilot's father didn't cry or ask questions. He spoke firmly, with unnatural precision, as if he'd rehearsed this conversation for years. Yes, Frederick was obsessed with strange topics. Yes, he read about disappearances, about flying objects, about anomalous corridors. Yes, he often said, sometimes the sky looks back at you. Lang wrote it all down and said nothing, but something stirred inside him. On the shore, he encountered a fisherman, weather-beaten, silent. The man stood by his boat, mending a net, as if each knot helped him forget what he'd seen. He didn't want to talk. His hands trembled, though the evening was warm. Then almost in a whisper, he said the lights weren't just in the sky. They reflected on the water, but not like light, like a shape, as if something or someone was beneath the surface. In the coastal village, no one spoke aloud anymore, but windows were now shut tighter at night. Eyes held caution. Voices carried a sluggishness, as if the place itself had changed. People whispered, the plane didn't crash. It vanished into an air that breathed, into a sky that moved. One of the drones launched by the military during the final sweep malfunctioned 40 seconds after takeoff. The signal cut out, but the archive automatically saved the footage. Lang watched it late at night, alone, and the longer he stared, the less he understood what he was seeing. Clouds, perhaps, but they moved too synchronously, the light within them too cold, as if something had infiltrated the atmosphere but hadn't fully decided whether it wanted to be noticed. On the final frame of flash, not sharp, not blinding, quiet, almost gentle, but within it, a shape could be discerned. Not of a plane, not of a bird, but of something observing. Lang knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning, and whoever or whatever was watching them, it already knew who Frederick was. He plays the recorder again and again. The room where he works is steeped in semi-darkness only. The faint flicker of a lamp reflects off the metal surface of the table. Headphones are pressed tightly to his head, but even they can't shield him from the feeling that the sound isn't coming from the device, but as if directly from inside his skull. He cleans the signal, removes interference, smooths out high frequencies, filters background noise, everything to the limit, to the point where usually nothing remains, but here something lingers. At the 17th secondum, strange glitch in the noise, as if a wave bends, distorting into a human silhouette. From nowhere, a voice emerges, not mechanical, not digital, not earthly. We didn't take him. He came on his own. The words aren't recorded, they're imprinted in the ether, as if an alien will force them into the signal. The voice doesn't sound like a voice. It lacks intonation, gender, age. It's like emptiness that has learned to speak. After this, Lang stops sleeping. When he finally manages to close his eyes, darkness comes instantly. And in that darkness, a plane cockpit, empty, silent. Frederick stands with his back to him, alone, as if awaiting an order that never came. Beyond the glass, nothing. But this nothing begins to move, first slowly, like a liquid, then like a living mass. It doesn't feel the space, it consumes it, like a black vortex sucking in light, air, meaning. And in this faceless darkness, something breathes. Lang doesn't see eyes, but he feels they're watching. Not at Frederick, at him. Sometimes, upon waking, he senses that someone was just standing at the door, didn't enter, just watched. One day, he notices the recorder starting on its own. He had turned it off, but hears it switch on again and rewind to the 17th second. He checks the battery is dead, but the recording still plays. Now, when listening, he notices something odd. The background noise changes slightly each time. At first, he chalks it up to tired ears, then to signal drift. But on the fifth playback, he hears someone faintly say his name, not aloud, within the noise. Michael. He rewinds back. Nothing. Rewinds again. There it is. And then it's gone again. With each day, it becomes harder for him to believe this is just a recording. He tests the file on another device, same result. Checks the original archive the recording is encrypted in a format no one uses. He sends a copy to an acoustics expert. No response comes. 2 days later, an empty envelope arrives in his mail. Inside a piece of black tape, melted at the edges. No signature, no explanation. And yet, he keeps listening. Because somewhere between the phrase and the pause, between the noise and the resonance, he begins to recognize something. Not information, not a voice, an intonation. As if this had already happened. As if he himself has said it, just not here, not now. And what frightens Lang most isn't that the recording might be real, but that it's feedback. 7 days after the disappearance, one of the emergency locator beacons sends a signal short, muffled, as if breaking through from underwater. It comes from an island marked on maps as uninhabited, devoid of infrastructure, equipment, or any landing sites. A place where no one was supposed to be. Ever. The signal is too precise to be a mistake. It's not distorted, doesn't waver like a disoriented device typically does. It pulses steadily, with a cold regularity, like the beat of a heart that shouldn't exist. A military team arrives there within an hour. Above the island, the sky is clear, but everything below seems lifeless. No birds, no wind, not even insects. It's too quiet, as if the place itself is afraid to make a sound. And there, right along the open shoreline, in a hollow between charred rocks and sparse coastal vegetation, stands the Cessna 182L, the very same, intact, no signs of an emergency landing. The wheels rest evenly on the sand, as if someone carefully placed it there by hand. The grass around isn't flattened, no damage, not a single scratch on the fuselage, but inside, it's empty. Not like an abandoned vehicle where you can sense haste or panic. No loose parts, no unfastened straps. Everything is in perfect order. The instrument panel is powered down but undamaged. The controls are locked, the pilot's seat isn't reclined, as if no one ever got Uber, as if no one was there at all. On the inside of the glass of film of condensation, tiny droplets of moisture that seem not to dry, but gather again and again, like the breath of something that can't have lungs. The glass surface in one spot appears burned, not a crack, not a scratch, but like a melted, thin scar running across the center of the windshield. Upon closer inspection, it seems to be neither outside nor inside. It's between the glass layers, like a trace of something that passed through. No traces are found nearby. No human, no animal, no fresh, no washed away. The locator beacon that sent the signal continues to operate, though its battery should have died 2 days ago. As if someone charged it from the outside. Inside, under the seat, they find an old tape recorder. In Ida tape. Blank. Completely. No noise, no background sound. But when played at a specific speed, prolonged distortions emerge in the spectrum, resembling a voice low, like in a dream where everything happens not in time, but in the shadow of time. Not a single trace of Frederick, not on the island, not in the water, not in thermal signatures. He wasn't there, but the plane returned, not as a machine, as a message. No one says it aloud, but everyone present feels the same. The plane didn't fly back, it was returned, and something remained. And the question no one dares to voice hangs in the mind like a drop of moisture inside a helmet. If it came back, where from? And who is next? In his temporary outposting, old hangar repurposed as a headquarters, Lang finishes the final report. His hands move mechanically. The words on the screen are lifeless, precise, much like those in dozens of cases before. Recorded, analyzed, submitted, but inside it's different. The words don't form a chain. They crumble into pieces, as if the paper he's writing on already knows. The truth won't lie flat here. He closes the laptop and remains in darkness. Beyond the thin metal walls, the building creaks from the wind, though meteorologists have predicted calm. Outside the window, the coastline, black as ink, in a sky where the stars seem unnaturally still. The radio, turned off an hour ago, comes to life. Not with a click, not with static, but with a voice. Steady, clear, free of interference. Delta Sierra Juliet requesting landing clearance. The voice isn't distant, not recorded, not background noise. It sounds as if it's coming from a cockpit just a few meters away. And it's not just repeating a message, it's waiting for a reply. Lang steps out of the hangar slowly. Cold sand crunches under his soles. His footsteps are muffled, as in a dream. The air is humid and strangely dense, like before a storm, but there are no lightning strikes. In the distance, over the strait, 4 lights appear. Green, even. They don't blink. They don't move. They simply hang in the sky, too low, too symmetrical. They don't illuminate, they watch. Their light falls on Lang's face. He lifts his eyes, distorted by the pale glow. He doesn't think. He remembers Sas, if this has happened before, as if he stood here already, as if he was expecting. His throat goes dry, but a voice escapes nonetheless barely audible, like an exhale. He doesn't know why he says it. He simply can't help himself. Frederick, is that you? No sound in response, no crash of waves, no breath of wind, only silence, taut as a thread. And the green lights trembling in the air, as if unable to decide whether to approach her, if they're already too close. In that moment, Lang realizes no radio transmission is ever one way. If you hear, then you are heard too. The story of Frederick Valentich's disappearance remained beyond the bounds of explanation. No wreckage, no body, no convincing theory. Only a recording too strange to dismiss as coincidence, and a plane that returned without a pilot, without calls, and without signs of time. Official reports remain silent. Archives are locked, but rumors persist. Local fishermen claim that on certain nights, when a calm settles over the water like a film and the sky becomes too smooth, too clear, a voice can be heard on the airwaves. It's not loud, not constant. It breaks through the white noise of old frequencies, cuts off, merges with the atmosphere like a faint echo of the past trying to reclaim its shape. The voice calls out. Sometimes it repeats call signs, sometimes it whispers something incomprehensible, as if sifting through unfamiliar names, and almost always right after light appears on the horizon. Not a flash, not lightning, but a soft, unnatural glow that instruments never register. Only eyes, only those who still believe the sky isn't silent but merely waiting, see it. They say, if you linger on the shore before a storm, you can hear the voice asking for landing clearance again, as if he's still in the air, as if he never left the sky.